this.
We're already live, dude.
Hey,
I can't undo it.
Hello, I'm Matt Bergman, and you're listening to the Punk Rock Libertarians Podcast, episode 290. I'm here tonight with Jared Schneiderman,
What up?
Otto Dassing,
What's up?
Kyle Wagner,
Hey guys.
and special guest, director of Monopoly of Force, Chris
Monopoly
Cofer.
on violence.
Monopoly on violence, dude.
Monopoly on violence. Oh shit!
How high are you already, dude?
Damn. Apparently not high enough.
Apparently, dude.
Yeah. Sorry about Monopoly on Force, Monopoly on violence. Same thing, right? I get the general idea.
Very similar concept.
Yeah. Shit.
Very.
Sorry about that. But anyways, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How long did it take for you to make this documentary?
Well, first of all, it wasn't just me. It began as me and Robert Beeler and Pete Quinones. And we did this. We started about 15 months ago. We formed the company, Stateless Productions, and decided to start building a team to create a documentary that was themed around anarchism. And we picked Vinnie Marshall of Think Liberty Slarian, Andrew Kern of the Principled Libertarian, Killian Hobbs of the Rational Standard and Coffee Shop Philosophy podcast, and Bryce Peterson, who helped really create that centerpiece, that history of anarchism piece. And Caitlin Cloven is handling our social media. So, and also we had other people that joined only in the last couple of months. Animation director John Miles, he did some of those, that animation where Walter Block is talking about getting punched, and then it's got him in the animation. John did that. Cody Smith, motion graphics artist, he did that opening title part, which is so cool and really draws you in. And of course, Vinny did the history part, that really like 7-minute block in the middle that catches you up on the history of anarchism.
That was
So
cool.
what would you say is the objective or goal of this film?
To reach people with some really basic ideas that haven't been exposed to them, because more often than not, when these ideas are brought up, they're never presented in a positive light, and usually not in any kind of dignified manner. The same with so many issues like that in the media, but anything that's fringe politically is just amongst them.
Word. So how would you say the reception has been thus far?
It's been really great, really surprisingly good. We've had almost 37,000 views as of today, and you can still count the number of downvotes. I think it's still less than 30, which is kind of shocking to me. I really expected more people to have a problem with it, but it's having this kind of strange effect. Either people really like it, or they're kind of they don't know what to think, and they're not sure how to elucidate their thoughts on it. It's I don't know. I think some people just see it and it makes them think a little bit, and they're not really sure how to react.
Now, where can people watch the Monopoly of Violence right now?
Oh, right now it's on YouTube. But if you, for whatever reason, can't access YouTube, you could always go to themonopolyonviolence.com, and there's options there to view it elsewhere and to purchase a 4K download or to get a free 720p download.
Now, I heard that you were trying
where can you get the laser disc?
I handcraft each laser disc in my garage.
Nice.
Okay.
I heard that you were trying to get it on Netflix. Is this true?
Yeah, that's really what our goal has been since the beginning was, and that was part of our sales pitch, was we want to get this documentary about anarchism on Netflix. I'm a little skeptical about that working out because if you look at some of their content, it's not necessarily, I guess, anarchist friendly. And I think the Obamas got involved in a few productions, or they're part owners or something now. But anyway, I don't expect
the process
much
for that.
Yeah, I don't expect much anti-authoritarian content to make it to Netflix. But you never know; it may get popular enough on YouTube that we can, show them the analytics. It's like, look, tens of thousands of people are interested in this, so they might consider watching it as they flip through those crappy UFO documentaries that Amazon keeps on there.
Right. What's the process for getting on Netflix?
Well, a lot of filmmakers will go through what's called an aggregator. and this is kind of an iffy market because they had one go under late last year. That was like the big one in the industry. So these aggregators are basically kind of well, it's the name is everything. It's a bunch of different movies, and they get like a lower rate on the streaming platforms like Hulu, iTunes, a few others. And so filmmakers try to go to these aggregators, pay a few $100 and, get their stuff out there. And it's kind of, I don't really expect it will make much money as an independent film, but the important thing to us is reach, getting it in front of people.
Sure. Is this the first movie you've directed, or have you?
Yeah, well, this is the first feature length film I've ever directed. So I've made a bunch of short films over the decades, but this was the first time I said, let's try to do something beyond 90 minutes, something that could potentially end up in a theater, or at least presented in with a bunch of other 2-hour movies.
Sure. Cool.
Yeah, so a lot of your interviews, we were talking in the group earlier. We were saying like where they were. I was going to guess that you got a lot of those at the Mises Institute, or where did you do those?
Kyle, you want to correct him on the pronunciation?
Mises,
Mises.
sorry.
Mises Pieces. Rhymes with like Reese's Pieces. Mises. You throw the I a little harder and you're there. But yeah, it did look like the Mises Institute for most of them.
That's actually Rothbard's old library. They moved all of his books, from his place in New York, I guess, after he died, and they're in that library. And it's a pretty amazing thing because it's all these obscure political and theoretical books. And
yeah, so I want to point out that out of everybody on the podcast who always gives me shit for mispronouncing Mises, like I was the only person that figured out where that was filmed.
I knew that was filmed.
No, you didn't, Phil.
Yeah,
Well,
actually, I did because I've been following the production of it.
Well, you could tell some of it was in the Mises Institute, but the library scenes, I was just curious if that was actually at Mises or at a public library, because that'd be
that's at Mises, and okay. That's even though we had it blocked off, we still got interrupted a few times.
Yeah.
It's amazing how the Mises Institute is a shrine to Rothbard.
Sometimes that's how it works out, Kyle.
So how did the I'm watching along the culture section with Jack V. Lloyd, who I know from my group as a comic guy, and we get to this meme, and there's my head. Man, I couldn't believe it. I think it said like, "This is your brain on statism" or something.
It was the statism is a bad trip, and it was that meme I made of the acid, where it's got like 100 little
acid tab.
Yeah. So who made the selection there on the Jack V. Lloyd memes?
Well, actually, those weren't meant to be. I guess I should have thought that through. I didn't mean to imply that Jack made those memes. Hey, nice product placement. Thank you. He was talking about memes, so we, I give our graphic designer some memes that I had made over the last few years. And so, there were kind of memes you may not have seen much of because I released them and just never really recirculated them. But I really felt the need to have a helmeted meme in there somewhere.
So, I laughed. It was
it's an inside joke for the Liberty Movement, so I really don't expect people are going to be like, going to start looking into who is that helmeted guy.
Yeah, and it's hilarious that the Liberty Movement actually is aware of Kyle memes. It's funny. I was in like a group for Joe Jorgensen or something like that, and somebody shared my old political spectrum, the one that kind of looks like phallic, and it was like some woman that I didn't know, and she was like, "This is the real spectrum," and she's sharing it as a joke, and everybody's cracking up in the comments, and I'm just like, I posted that. I swear it was like 2005 years later. I see that spectrum me. It is weird.
Well, somebody posted the movie in there. They're like, "Hey, you guys seen this?" And so many people in there have, because I suspect at some point soon we'll reach the bubble in the audience of like the whole Liberty Movement seen it, and then it'll just really slow, because the rest of the world is kind of like
Yeah, and like anything, you get that, or it's big when it's new. So you're
Yeah.
getting that wave of, hey, here's the big release, and then things trickle off. I wouldn't be surprised to see you hit 100,000 views on YouTube though over time.
Yeah, maybe in a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would
Have
be
you been?
pretty badass, dude. Hey, question: Where did you interview David Freeman?
That actually wasn't me. I did all the interviews except for 2 of them, and that's because Vinny had closer proximity.
Okay,
Um,
cool, nice.
He did Thaddeus Russell and David Friedman, and I believe that was in Friedman's home.
I was gonna say, it
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
looked like it'd be his home.
Yeah, that was badass. One thing that I really enjoyed too was I like how you got Carl Hess in there.
I really wanted to. It's like he's one of those people that slips through the cracks. He's an unusual type of
And he's my favorite.
yeah. I mean,
He's my number one, man. He's I mean, or at least in the top 3. It'd probably be like him and Spooner, and
but
I don't.
he's contemporary, and he was involved in
Yeah.
such an important part of history. It's like he was in the Goldwater campaign, and then he sort of becomes this anarchist and just drifts away from it. It's like I would like to see a feature length docu on him. Just
Right.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, dude, he's like the coolest motherfucker, and it's really neat how like you on YouTube you can watch like I think like 3 or 4 like 2-hour talks that Hess is giving.
Yeah, in fact, we used that's where we grabbed
Yeah.
libertarianism.org. Let us use some of those clips of like the old stuff because he would just go to these Libertarian Party things or just that's the thing. People forget what it was like before the internet. You had to go places, these conventions or whatever, and you really had to be into it because it's like, I mean, now it's like we got this. You can all these people together in the same place having a conversation. But back then it was like, all right, we'll be at the Milwaukee Sheraton, for this weekend.
Right.
I mean, just think of the people. If you think people are weird now, it's like just think of how weird you had to be back then, to travel hundreds of miles to go to one of those things.
Or they did a lot of newsletters. It was a lot of mailers and newsletters, like the infamous Ron Paul newsletter. That was the kind of thing. Like you had to subscribe to get these kind of documents or these papers that were for that movement. And the mainstream would never have known about it. I really thought that here's what I thought. When I first got into libertarianism, I thought that the Federal Reserve and the fact that they just print money willy-nilly was going to blow up. I thought that news was going to go everywhere. People were going to be like, holy shit, we can't trust the dollar. They're just creating this stuff like crazy. And people were going to abandon the dollar very, very quickly. I was expecting hyperinflation just on the fact that the information is out there. That the Fed, this is how the monetary system works. They don't teach that in school. It was shocking. I'm like, oh, this is how we fund our deficits. And the amazing thing is, even with the information in front of your face and freely available, the dollar is still valuable. People don't care. They're like, oh, okay, another $1 trillion. All right, whatever.
I mean,
Well, yeah, they craft narratives around it like the modern monetary theory to justify bullshit.
Yeah.
Or they don't care or think about it. Most people still have no clue or don't think about the gold standard. They don't think about money printing. But I thought in the internet age, it would be too big of a secret to keep in the bag. I was like, the dollar's going to crash, tomorrow because if I'm reading this, everybody else is reading it. But that's not the case. And even people that do read it do not care.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't, they don't understand how it impacts their life yet. And until it really does in a bad way, I think most people won't care. And that's the hard part of all this is trying to find ways to communicate that. It's like, you don't feel the pain right away, but down the road, it, really messes things up for the whole economy.
Yeah. And I mean, ironically, or what we haven't expected is we haven't had hyperinflation, right? Gas is $1.70 or something like that. I mean, a lot of prices have come down. So, that kind of flies in the face of a lot of this. Well, the Fed is printing trillions, and so we're going to have hyperinflation. It's actually been a lot of deflation, and I think that's because of the debt, but I don't want to derail the conversation. But,
Too late.
it just hasn't played out like people like Peter Schiff and Ron Paul said it would. So,
But that's kind of a thing we have to face too, is that, if you're that person that's always making the predictions, then if they don't come true, at some point, then people are really going to stop listening to you. So
yeah.
So if you had, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say, like, Chris. Now, as far as like your movie, you got like pretty much, dude. You have like an amazing array of guests. You know, get of like speakers. Like, just tell everybody about like you like. Could you give a list off the top of your head?
Oh, there's like over 30 people. So I would probably try to remember it in order of the interviews. But I mean, you really want me to do that now?
No, I mean, well, I can name a couple of them. You know, like Scott Horton was in there.
But yeah, I mean, on that trip, there was Scott Horton, Max Borders, Stefan Kinsella, Walter Block, and then Michael Humer. That was a trip where I flew down to Texas and then ended up driving to Louisiana to talk to Walter Block, then back to Texas to talk to Scott and Max, and then getting on a plane going to Colorado to talk to Michael Humer.
I mean, it would probably be easier to make a list of people who are not in this movie. It's like, like
We did want to have a Justice League approach. We wanted to be able to say like, hey, it's everyone. And I don't feel that we misrepresented anybody's message. So, if we're fortunate, maybe some of these people will be in future documentaries.
was there anybody who like you wanted to get but you couldn't just make it work, like time wise, scheduling wise?
Well, we've decided not to mention people that we asked to be in the film, and they decided not to because really I don't know what their reasons were. You know, they might have been legitimate or they might have just been cautious. It may not have been like, and also really we were kind of nobodies. You know, it's like, who are these people? You know, except for, Pete knew a lot of the people at LVMI, which helped because Gesundheit.
Thank you.
But,
Us too.
You didn't have. I didn't see Hapa. I don't know if he was in there.
he never leaves Turkey for one thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like Michael
Well-
Miles did an interview with him. He had to fly to Turkey, but he was going to Turkey anyway because he was at some PFS, one of Hoppa's events.
Yeah, that's a little ways to go for an interview. You like climb into the mountains, like you're gonna meet a monk or something like that, and you're like, you got your video camera. You're like, here we are for our clip with Hans Hermann Hoppe.
Right.
Who else wasn't in there that I just thought of somebody else that was prominent. Oh, it'll come back to me anyway. There was a long-haired guy. He had like long black hair. He was all about talking about consent. Government
Yeah,
isn't
it's Michael
consent.
Humer.
That's Michael Humer. Okay.
Yeah, that was a cool talk.
And his book is pretty amazing. The Problem of Political Authority. That was what got me into wanting to interview him. And I wanted to interview more than like one type of. I didn't want it to be all Miss Essians or whatever, Rothbardians. And really, if anything, it's like if I could do it again, I probably would have tried to make more of an effort to get more left anarchists. But there's less of them. It's hard to find them at times. Unless it's
At least prominent ones that
Dude,
actually.
what about like Mike Shipley, dude? Well, why didn't you hit up Mike Shipley?
Yeah.
Yeah, you had
Yeah,
Kevin Shaw
where
in
was
there,
the
but in the
shipster?
culture section.
we didn't
Mike
want to
Shipley,
include. We didn't want
like
to have an interest in the film.
Dude, like Alex Miller, man, he's like one of the coolest left libertarians, dude. You could have hit him up.
I'm trying to think of who that is.
Yeah, he's pretty fucking awesome, man.
Who was the guy that compared public schools to prisons?
That's Thaddeus Russell.
Bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you interview him?
Vinny interviewed him at a. We just found like we rented a space, like an office space. I thought we'd have to do that more throughout the film, but really we didn't. There's only a couple of places we had to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would be received by the mainstream. He was very blunt about it. I mean, he's like, it's a truant. You're a truant, and then they drag your ass back into the school. He's like, it's basically a prison, and if you don't send your kid, you get locked up. I was like, oh my gosh, dude.
He doesn't like illusions, and it's one of those things where if you think about what he says, it's kind of hard to refute it though.
Here's what I think of. There's that G. Edward Griffin guy that wrote that book, the Creature from Jekyll Island. He puts a very nefarious spin on the Fed, on the founding of the Fed, on everything. It's almost like a mystery novel but everything is done in a nefarious fashion. It's not just facts. It's got a spin to it. And I think with public schools, like you can say, well, this was a sinister thing that was, designed to put everybody in a box for capitalist production, and that's why the bell rings. Or you can you don't have to take that perception of it. It's all a matter of perception. And to a public school teacher who thinks that she's trying to teach a little kid, letters and colors and counting and math, like she's not, she has no nefarious agenda. So like,
dude,
You'd
I
be
think that was my
surprised.
favorite. That was my favorite line of the movie.
Sorry,
I
Mike.
think, when that was my favorite line of the movie, possibly when Thaddeus Russell was talking about schools. And what did he say? They're like day prisons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the exact phrasing that he used was like so awesome. It's escaping me right now, but
He's
that
good
was
for
really fucking cool.
Yeah, he is totally good for that. I mean, he does Renegade University, and I mean, you expect that type of him to talk like that. Like I wouldn't expect him to talk any other way. So
Yeah.
I really like the fact that he was what he said and everything. And I mean, Kyle, like it's not all going to be facts. I mean, like straight fact. Like here are the numbers. Like no, it's like, well, this is how the way I see it, and this is the way we as anarchists feel.
mm-hmm.
The
Yeah,
the
for
public
sure,
school
it was
system
an
is.
opinion.
And he's not lying about any of that. I mean, it's all true. I mean, if you
that's
skip
his
school,
analysis
you're-
of the facts.
what's
What's
that?
that?
That's his analysis of the facts.
Right.
Yeah, it's his
Yeah.
analysis and his sort of cohesive worldview as informed by those facts, or at least a part of his worldview.
And plus, he was in academia, so it's like it's
Right.
not like he doesn't know what he's
Yeah,
talking
and he
about.
grew up. I listen to his show all the time. He went to like where did he go to Berkeley? He was like, and also you could almost even term him as a left anarchist, even though he won't admit it. I mean,
Well,
he's
that's
got
how
a
he
lot of
started.
sort of like postmodernist.
Oh
really
yeah, he loves
taken into
Proudhon.
postmodernism and Proudhon.
I
Right.
did get left anarchism out of him because he was talking about how that molds you into a productive member of the capitalist system. They want you able to work on an assembly line and follow direction from a boss and things like
Right.
that. And he's like, I'm a free thinker. You want to be a free thinker.
Well, he's
Yeah.
he used to be a socialist when he was younger,
Right.
and so then he sort of changed his mind. Probably, I think in the last 5 to 10 years.
Something like that, yeah.
I was
Yeah, I
still
mean, he's
getting
not-
anti-capitalism from him. I don't know.
He's not. I mean, he's definitely a pro-free market guy. He's more of a anti-corporatist, anti like work for work as an ethic, that sort of thing. It's hard to pigeonhole him.
But I mean, we all kind of understand. Like, I understand the complaints or the criticisms of capitalism. We all are familiar with the excesses and the things that the cronies get away with.
Sure.
So it's like there's a little grain of truth in there somewhere. So
Definitely. So how has the reception been among like non-libertarians? Have you gotten any feedback from
there's
those
been
sorts of people?
there haven't been that many negative comments. Like the comments that were negative I could see on YouTube might be like you can kind of tell they didn't watch it. It was just like some quick graffiti against somebody who's in it or something.
Right, sure.
But I've asked a bunch. I've asked a lot of my friends who are leftists, or at least not. They didn't identify with me exactly, and I haven't heard back from many of them. So either they, not everyone has the time, to watch a 2-hour movie, especially if it's like, hey, me and my friends made a movie, you should watch it, because it's usually a recipe for awfulness. But I don't know. We're just kind of gonna wait it out, and I mean, there's still some people that are in it that haven't really pushed it yet. They haven't like retweeted, like Tom Woods retweeted. I think a few others did. So I feel like there's more, there may be a secondary wave of interest. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, my next question is for Kyle Wagner. Kyle, after watching this film in its entirety, are you still a statist?
Oh yes, I am.
He's even further entrenched.
I mean, it's
You're still balls deep up in some statism.
Yeah, I anarchists have not been able to really address although they did touch on it. They're like, the one guy I remember, he was like, well, we can't really beat states, like they're just more powerful. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of a problem for you, I mean,
you're talking about when Jim Scott said it takes a state to beat a state.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, okay, so what's the anarchist plan?
The rest of that sentence for him was that that he doesn't think we're going to beat the state, and we're going to be releasing the full interviews for everybody.
Yeah.
There's going to be a bunch of them, like maybe 10 of them on YouTube, and the rest of them we'll have on the Blu-ray. So you can see 20 to 30 minutes of what somebody had to say, because it was kind of a tragedy we had to cut so much. It's just for time and to keep people's interest, because you can't really watch somebody talk for 11 minutes about some obscure intellectual topic. You have to slice it down to 3 or 5.
Yeah, it takes a state to beat a state. What a great quote. And definitely a problem for anarchists. And the other point that anarchists never seem to address is in the effort of competing with a state or fighting a state, how is that not chaos, right? Is not throwing Molotov cocktails and trying to kill police and street fighting against the state not a state of chaos?
After you watch the film, do you feel like that's what we were pushing?
I know that's not what anarchists want. They want sort of a peaceful scenario, but the question I always say is, well, who makes the rules of anarchy? It's always like, well, we're going to have private property and we're going to have these third party, arbitration companies, and people are going to submit to them if they do something wrong. I mean, you're just like making up rules as if you guys would be in charge. And that's not what anarchy is. Anarchy is everybody kind of for themselves. It's a complete state of chaos.
Normatively, most people don't want things like, murder, rape, assault,
Some
theft.
do.
Right.
Some do.
But those people can be dealt with. Like if you got a violent aggressor, that's not really something to have a deep philosophical discussion about.
Right. So push comes to shove, and then you go, well, we can handle them. You think you can handle them, but it's like you can't, because it's not just a lone person. You could be dealing with hundreds or thousands of people who are organized against you. Certainly there are millions of people that oppose ANCAPs and everything that they stand for.
Kyle, question: are the boots flavored?
I mean, I think I'm just better at ANCAPs about thinking this stuff through and thinking how this is going to play out in the real world.
Kyle, you ask the same question every time. You ask how we're going to enforce our laws. We're not going to be making laws that everyone's going to have to live by. It's like there's going to be, if there's a conflict, there will be mechanisms to deal with that conflict. And really, the ANCAPs are the only one who are putting forth those solutions. I really don't know what anarcho-socialists or anarcho-communists would have, but I'm guessing it's going to be something involving democracy, where a bunch of people get together and say, well, what are we going to do with so-and-so? And other groups will be similar. Some people might just, shoot you in the head for trying to steal an apple from them or something. But I mean, that's panarchy. That's people will have different norm sets, and they're not always going to want to, live under some centralized oppressive, regime that's saying this is how things are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, the state system is very simple. It's this is how things are going to be. These are the rules, and you're going to follow the rules, or yeah,
Very
there's
simple.
a gun. There's certainly force. There's certainly coercion behind it. And the one guy, what was his name? You just said it a minute ago. The guy with the long dark hair. He's like, making his case that what is it?
Michael Huemer.
Michael Huemer, yeah, that it's not consensual. And I wanted to, and a lot of people try to say that it is, and they go wrong. He is absolutely right. It's not consensual. And it's not consent of every individual in a state. It's sort of support of the majority, right? It's most people in this area support this, and then they absolutely impose their way on the minority. That's how group dynamics work.
Yeah, the group. So for you, group dynamics is the majority forces their way on whoever the minority is.
Yeah, that's how it works. I mean, like, and you always assume like that the minority is a good guy, but sometimes the minority is a bad guy, and it's the civilized society that's imposing its rules on the bank robber or the rapist. The minority is often a piece of shit.
So I would be imposing my rules on others. I mean, you're kind of arguing almost like someone who's anti-proprietarian. It's like, well,
well, property itself is a rule, right? To say, well, we're going to have private ownership is a rule
well,
that
it's
gets
actually
imposed.
it's a norm. You know, people have respected the fact that you can have your own home, you know, since there's been people in homes, you know.
Well, there are a lot of people that would like to take away the riches of the wealthy and redistribute to the people, you know, like what Beverly Hills and these high rent zip codes and things like that. I mean, gated communities, there are lots of people on the left who would storm the gates and kill those people and take everything they have.
Kyle, are you worried about like people on the left storming the gates of Wagner Estates?
Yeah, yeah. Casa de Wagner, right?
That's what the helmet's for.
You're taking that nice lampshade you got there.
Yeah, I mean, I would be overwhelmed by 300 people, you know, or even 20 people probably.
I don't know, dude.
Or you'd have the forethought to hire a security agency to protect your neighborhood / town / whatever. You know,
your covenant community.
Maybe somebody would have a security camera.
Dude, like Kyle Wagner is pretty badass though. Kyle Wagner is pretty badass though. He just said like he might be overwhelmed by 20 people. like he might be overwhelmed by 20 people. That's pretty badass, dude. It sounds like Kyle Wagner's not worried at all about groups of 10 or less. So
it's like that movie. It reminds me of Scarface, you know, where he's like, you know, basically a one-man army. He's got that arsenal in his up in his room, and they all try to come in.
I sense a meme coming.
He shoots them off.
I already made that meme. That was one of the earliest memes I made. It was Kyle holding like it was the, you know, like Kyle holding the thing. It wasn't a machine gun. It was America, like a cutout. And it was like, say hello to my little government. And it was just...
It all comes full circle.
That's awesome.
I was not persuaded by the documentary, but you know.
But what do you think, Kyle? Do you think like when the normies see this, if we do make it to Netflix, how do you think they're going to react?
That's a great question. I mean, because I'm you know, steeped in libertarian dogma. I've heard all this stuff before, right? There's very little new information to me or new perspectives, because I've spent years talking to ANCAPs and anarchists, and but a new person I think would be probably shocked by a lot of the statements in the documentary, and really I would like to think that it would make them think, because some of the war stuff is, you know, rock solid. You know, I watched a lot of it going, okay, this is a lot of basic libertarian stuff, and I agree with a lot of that.
Kyle, you're saying a lot of it is like kind of like 2 in the pink, 1 in the stink type stuff.
No, basic. That would be advanced, or that's a little. That's not actually what I was saying at all. I don't even know where.
Please don't say any more about that.
Yeah, but no, I do. I think I would hope that some people get a little bit of a shock out of it. Like, I loved Dave Smith's little bit of it was a clip of stand-up comedy where he was like, September 10th, we thought the whole world was cool with us. We thought everybody was our buddies, and September 11th, we were like, oh, what? Like, where did that come from?
But he was completely right, because I was like in my early 20s when 9/11 happened, and I remember what the world was like before. It was very different. And then it's like we were just in oblivion, and then like all you knew was that you had to buy something with a flag on it. And it's like if you watch the episode of South Park,
no, dude.
The 9/11
Chris, are you saying that you were a flag-it, dude?
Huh?
Are you saying that you were a flag-it?
No. I'm pretty sure I didn't go for that. I think I was pretty anti-Bush at the time. But anyway,
anti-Bush. How stunning.
Dude, did you rock against Bush?
Yeah. What were you in the during the 9/11 attacks, like politically? Where did you kind of stand at that point?
I was still a libertarian, but you know, that was kind of not a good time to be a libertarian. So it's like most people didn't want to hear anything, and I just didn't say much, because it was like, you know, you can kind of tell we're entering a new era. You know, like, you know, when they're passing like tens of thousands of pages of legislation.
That's when you gotta talk. Dude.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was also out in Los Angeles at the time, and that's really a place where nobody wants to hear anything about freedom.
I mean, I was in Maryland, dude. It's like Democrat City, dude.
Yeah. Well, I just wasn't into it at the time. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to not say anything.
You got to pick your battles. And
like, dude, I remember on 9/11, people are like, never forget. Yeah, dude, I remember that day. I was thinking, great. What? Like, right. Like, we're talking like hours after the towers fell. I was thinking, oh, I was so scared. I was like, what freedoms are they going to take away from us, you know, as a result of this?
Yeah.
Matt's a better
You know,
libertarian.
how
than
are
all
they
of
going to
us,
use
okay?
this?
Well, I was like
but then it's
13
just
years
fucking
old. So
9/11,
in
dude.
my defense, I was
I was a
like,
freshman in high
I'm not
school.
going to be
Yeah.
able to play football outside today.
I was, I was in college, but I would say I was in the same boat as you guys as little kids, not knowing anything about it. I didn't understand anything. I was not a libertarian. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about the
Kyle,
Patriot Act.
you're probably busy dodging all that college poon.
Yeah, I was playing video games in college. I feel bad about it now. I feel guilt about it now for being so uninformed and so naive about it and not skeptical. I should have been way more skeptical about the event itself and about the response to it, the wars that were used. I just wasn't paying attention to politics in my early 20s. And I'd say by my late 20s, I started reading more and more news, found Ron Paul, and then I was like, holy shit, that's what this was all about. You know what I mean? So, which the Ron Paul's blowback explanation made sense to me the first time I heard it. I was like, oh, that's what this is. That was a revenge attack. I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot more sense than out of nowhere.
He hate us for our freedoms.
I'm glad we got old Ron to be in it for a little bit.
You
that
did.
was
You had a
cool,
little
man.
clip of him in there. That was great.
Yeah. He was in there a couple of times. It's like you always want to have him in there a lot, but it's like we've got so many people. It's just you got to apportion them out.
No, he's fucking awesome. He'd probably be like he's in my top 3 probably libertarians of all time, man. He's like really fucking cool. That's
Yeah, he's
really
very good
awesome.
in person,
Got him in
too.
there. What was that?
He's very cool in person.
Yeah, man.
He's still making great videos on Facebook. Like
He's got a
every
whole
day.
studio there.
What's
yeah,
that?
YouTube,
Like
Ron Paul Liberty
the
Report.
building I interviewed him in, he's got this like kind of elaborate looking studio. I poked my head in there. I was like, oh, I wonder if you can use any of that. Like, no. So I was okay.
That's for the Liberty Report.
It was the good. It was the good.
So he
approach.
does the Liberty Report in his home.
Yeah. You guys didn't know that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not down with every bit of the
I was
Ron Paul
assuming that he
lore.
did.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess it makes sense. He's he's an older
Yeah,
guy.
why
He
wouldn't
doesn't
he?
want to be like, he probably doesn't want to be like shuffling off to an office.
Dan comes on over every morning and they
Dude, Dan McAdams lives in the pool house, dude.
He's the pool boy. That's a meme right there, dude. That's a meme. Kyle, make that meme, dude.
come on,
Yeah.
Dan, it's time to come in and do the Liberty Report.
He's so insightful, even at his age. I mean, Ron is, it's really interesting to hear his commentary on all that's going on right now. It's great. Now I don't watch every episode. I just catch clips, or I usually just hit like as I read the headline or the head message. But I watch some of them. I do watch some of them, and I get something out of them every time.
Well, as far as like Ron having like, remember what I was saying about how I remember what the world was like for 9/11. Imagine being Ron Paul, where you remember what the world was like, way back, and you've seen every, step forward to totalitarianism. I mean, that would be quite a life, I think.
It's crazy how you can stick with it so long after seeing all that and not get completely demoralized.
You say that, but we had the progressive era where they passed a lot of this stuff. Social Security, Medicare, the Federal Reserve. We went through the World Wars. We've been through Vietnam. So I don't know if it's a decline or just sort of, I always think of this as a continuation of the progressive era, because the welfare state's the same. The interventionist foreign policy has been the same since Wilson. So
The regulations,
regulations have gotten worse. I don't know. There's more federal agencies now, but it's the last 100 years, 120 years have been all sort of the same thing, right?
Right, but my point is just seeing all that happen and still sticking strong and not just being like, well, fuck it, like I'm just gonna live my life,
That's apathy, and
it's
that's
apathy, but it's like understandable if you've experienced all that. I mean,
yeah,
You could say it's informed apathy.
It's informed apathy. Sure, you just realize like, man, it's only getting worse. But he stuck around. He stuck around, and he actually made things better with the whole Ron Paul revolution and created created a bit of hope. He created a whole new crop of libertarians.
Absolutely.
Basically brought libertarianism to the internet. I mean, it might have found its way there eventually, but I just remember when I got into it, which was around, I guess, 2009 or 10, in the run up to like 2012. I was just seeing a ton of YouTube videos from like Ron Paul and other stuff, even stuff like the Kaiser report, talking about economics. I don't know if you guys remember that guy.
I remember him.
Yeah. It's just this wealth of information just coming from the internet that wasn't there, or at least I wasn't aware of it in my college days. So I credit him with a great deal of that.
I think Ron's the greatest, man. I just can't, imagine living the next 50 years of your life and just tirelessly beating the drum for these ideas. There's so many distractions. There's for me, there's video games, there's work, there's my personal life with, my relationships, like my family. I was more passionate and more focused on politics in my 20s than I am now in my late 30s. It just sort of you lose that energy, and I just really appreciate Ron being able to shut out all the, he knows nothing about pop culture, right? He doesn't know who the Kardashians are dating or anything like that. He shuts all that out and just exclusively focuses on real shit, real politics, real foreign policy, real history, real economics, almost singularly focused on what's really important in politics.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those beacons. He you just point to him and say what, he was correct about this virtually every time, and he's just one of those people that you look at as an example. I mean, whether or not
like I've always heard that he only smokes the best strains.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that's not really talked about with him is his social conservatism. And I as I get older, I find myself leaning a little more in the conservative camp. I really appreciated, that Ron always wore a suit, always looks respectable. Libertarians tend to like to wear capes and assless chaps and all kinds of crazy shit like that.
Dude,
and,
who told you what I was wearing to Orlando?
It's not very punk rock of you.
I know. And I just
it's not very Cash Money.
So am I moving toward conservatism, or have I always sort of been I always liked Ron Paul, and I still like Ron Paul. I don't
always
feel like
been
I've
a fuddy-duddy, dude.
From that, but yeah,
just a regular old fuddy-duddy.
Yeah, he's maybe I'm growing to become a fuddy-duddy. Maybe that's what it is.
Well, I mean, socially, it's you're not gonna you probably shouldn't be grabbing onto whatever is popular in the culture now. It's I think the conservative thinking comes when you step back and look at people and say, why are they making those choices? And it's I think people don't always make choices based on hey, they're not really conscious always of why they're doing things. So it's just you're conscious of what someone else is doing, and that's strange. I don't even see what they get out of that. And then of course they can't, because it's just
I'm gonna catch some heat for this, but I saw this meme the other day, and it was the woman the man was pregnant, and the woman was it was a transgender couple, and both couples were transgender. So the man in the relationship was biologically a woman and was pregnant. I was so confused by the whole thing. I was like, man, this and no hate on the community there, but I'm like, wow, things have really changed. This is I don't know what to make of this. It was the craziest picture. So and she was beautiful woman. So
was it kind of like that Blur song?
I don't know, man.
Blur song.
Wasn't that Blur, the song boys who like girls who like boys who like girls?
That's an 80s song.
Wasn't that it? That was a 90s song, dude. That was a 90s song, right?
All right.
That was Bergman's anthem for a while.
Was.
I want to ask about Eric July.
What about?
I just, I saw him interviewed. He had some good time on the film. I don't know that I really had a question. I know Eric, and I haven't talked to him in a while, but it's always interesting to see him, and he's one of a kind, isn't he? Like he's playing his metal rap and cap. I mean, that has to be the only band in the world that fills that niche. So
Libertarians are unique. We like to fill the market with our niches.
yeah.
Definitely. He's on the Blaze TV now, right?
Yeah. Well, I know he's with that outfit. I don't know what all they've got. I just
he's just like a random contributor, just floats around from like also all their shows they do on Glenn Beck's network. And it's so funny to hear like a bunch of these Christian conservatives, and then there's Eric July talking about anarcho-capitalism.
What is the Blaze? Is the Blaze? What is their political leaning? Would you say?
Well, it's Glenn Beck's network. Glenn Beck identifies as libertarian, but not too many libertarians. I mean, not too many libertarians view him as libertarian.
No, but, I don't.
Mean, oddly enough,
moments.
Oddly enough, though, like I have some libertarian friends who actually say that they got into libertarianism through Glenn Beck.
Wow,
I'm right here. I learned a lot of libertarianism from Glenn Beck.
You remember the whiteboard?
Jared, can we mute Phil?
No, like for real.
Beck,
like
tried to
Tom Woods was on his
connect
show.
to the Tea Party when that was popular, and that may be where some people jumped on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was involved with Campaign for Liberty, that the organization Ron founded, and I was trying to like attract that Tea Party crowd. I put the group on the Tea Party Patriots website, and so like we were kind of like, well, this is the local Tea Party / Campaign for Liberty, because the Tea Party was taxed enough already, and there was a lot of like
but then you kind of ruined C4L by doing
what's that?
You kind of ruined C4L. Now it's just like a bunch of fucking Tea Party organization.
My local group's still pretty solid, but I mean, I was trying to attract a group of people that were skeptical, of big government and felt like the taxes were too high, and we wanted to promote all of Ron Paul's ideas. So the idea was to convert them, not to convert C4L.
Right. Sure.
Kyle, I've got a question for you, real quick. Do you think that somebody might watch the film and then they may be kind of like you in that they're not ready to jump into anarchism, or at least in your case, back in to anarchism, but if nothing else, maybe it'll leave them open to the libertarian mindset. They'll say, well, I'm not willing to go that far, but you know what? This is a much more reasonable approach. Do you think it'll have that effect maybe?
Yeah, well, I think that it would open a lot of minds to some of the ideas, like the public schools are actually not as wholesome and wonderful as they're portrayed to be, that there's a little bit of an agenda there, the war stuff. So on certain issues, I would say by issues, I think it does a great job of introducing people to the concept of blowback, the concept of public schools being sort of a manufacturing of little workers. What's that?
Indoctrination mills.
Indoctrination centers. Thank you. Yeah. So it even if they don't go full bore, the film introduces a lot of concepts that people have never considered before, and from that point, it's positive. But I think of your 40,000 views, probably a good 30 of them are preaching to the choir. Right? Because this is getting shared in libertarian circles. It's getting watched by libertarians. It's getting liked and commented on by libertarians. I think that's probably most of your audience.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we can hope to push beyond it, but that's our challenge.
Yeah. Well, once you produce something like that, then you have something you can share, and hopefully people watch it.
Yeah. But I feel like the next one's going to be a little bit more mainstream, so it'll be more accessible to everybody. They won't have to be accepting an entire. Really, like what the film is kind of like outlining things that were that I at least hope to address through films in the near future. You know, it's like make a film about this topic, that topic. You know,
Is there a sequel in the works?
No, not specifically a sequel to this film, but we're working on another film. Well, we just decided which one we're doing. And that one's going to be basically because of all the police stuff that's going on right now. It's going to be addressing that kind of a focus on like a crisis in policing.
Did you guys see the LP posted? It says Black Lives Matter. It was in big letters on the Libertarian Party's Facebook page, and then Nick shared it, and he said, in case hopefully this is loud enough for the people in the back or something like that. And I have mixed emotions about it because part of me feels like it's pandering.
Well, is it a political position? I mean, politically, what does Black Lives Matter mean? You know, it's kind of like coming across as like all those disingenuous corporations telling you how they really do care about Black people this month or whatever.
Right.
You know, just like they care about gay people during their month, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's like it's pretty transparent for the most part, and he's not a principled guy anyway. So it's and he's really on the way out. So it's like everything he does is kind of like seems a little tainted. You know, people are just ready for him to be gone.
I think some are. I've seen other people in the comments. I mean, everybody has their supporters, right? And I've seen people saying, Nick, once you leave this party, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll probably leave too.
Hopefully they do.
Like they're just there for Nick Sarwark. So,
and they say the Mises
don't threaten me with a good time.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it just kind of comes off as virtue signaling or pandering. That's how I take it.
It does, but did you read the post that was with the image of Black Lives Matter? Did you read that at all?
No, I did not. And no, neither
it was
did most people.
It was really good though. Like it was really on point. And it was like that bit. Black Lives Matter was to get you to hook and look at it, and then once you read it, it's like nails every libertarian talking point about
and that's
the drug war.
And that's like Joe going to a Black Lives Matter protest and then also just like tweeting up a storm with just awesome shit for the past week, and making statements on the drug war and police, the whole unqualified or qualified immunity shit. No, they've been, fuck Sarwark, but like, yeah, that's been some good stuff lately.
Yeah, man, I know of quite a number of libertarians have been going to these protests, and I've heard good things coming from them. And I think we should definitely be like all about this, man. Like a guy was murdered on camera.
Yeah, this is right up libertarians' alley as far as police brutality, government oppression. So I mean, it's a good issue or a good topic for libertarians.
I mean, it's not gonna the country's really not gonna heal anytime soon on this issue. So, until we're offering something that they can engage with, I don't feel like we're gonna miss a window or anything. It's not like next year the police will get their act together and everybody will be like, "Oh, I'm glad we had that temporary crisis."
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of statist apologists are going to say, well, they'll come up with some rationale for what the cop did, but I don't see one. I mean, why the hell do you keep your knee on a guy for 10 minutes, man? Like, get out of here.
Question. Is everybody good to do an after hours tonight or not?
Yeah, I can.
Nice.
You can. Are you good, Jared, or not?
How long is the after hour?
I wasn't planning on it.
It'll be at least 20 minutes.
I could do it.
Phil,
I wasn't planning on it either, but I could. Hold on, I got to plug in.
Phil, you're
laptop
least
real quick.
important.
I know.
The show's not ending, is it, Matt?
No, the podcast is about to end. We're going to take things over to after hours.
Okay.
Guys, so if you want to check out our after hours program, you can hit us up at patreon.com, contribute a minimum of $1 per month to help keep the lights on in Anarchy Basement. And we've also got t-shirts for sale at libertariancountry.com. If you type in the code PRL, you'll receive a 10% discount. If you spend $50 or more and you type in the code PRL2, you'll receive a 20% discount. Chris Cofer, is there anything that you want to plug?
Well, yeah. First, if you're interested in the film we've been talking about, you can see it for free on YouTube if you search The Monopoly on Violence, or you can go to themonopolyonviolence.com where you can see, all kinds of variations of the download. And not only that, but the soundtrack, which we didn't get to talk about, I was kind of hoping we would, was done by J.J. Boogie, who is a guitarist producer for the band Arrested Development, which surely you've heard of.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about the soundtrack on After Hours, man. And I also want to talk about the whole like everything that's going on right now with the like police state and shit. I want to talk about that shit. I'm gonna hear your hot take on that, dude.
Okay.
So, I think and this podcast is brought to you in part by Conversations About Freedom podcast, hosted by Moral Bob. Until next time, live free
or die.